there's a soldier. He has 1 year to get ready to deploy, and he has to be trained and ready within that year. In a perfect world, everyone who's preparing this soldier has only one goal, that is his proficiency and readiness. Let's say one of his goals for this cycle is gunnery training. He's got at his disposal ranges, area ammo, and equipment, and he's got virtual trainers. They all have finite limits like throughput, availability, and cost. His unit has a limited budget, limited ranges, limited ammo, limited equipment, and limited TADs. Because he's not the only one that must be ready to go, he must compete for the use of that equipment. So let's take a look at one of the most cost-effective tools by which to train: virtual training equipment. In a perfect world, he and all his buddies would have the right type of training equipment, the right quantity, they'd be at the right location, and there'd be plenty of them. But this is not a perfect world. There are never enough trainers, may not be the right kind, or in the right location. Why? So let's examine this issue. A soldier has a target of 1 year to train to proficiency. It's a finite target. He aims and shoots, but realizes that he must first look to find a system upon which to be trained. TRADOC is responsible for defining, updating, and publishing the training standard for the soldier. He aims to meet the soldier's finite 1-year deadline. But he misses because he must first go to the DAG-3 for the funding and POSTRI for acquisition, which means at best it can take more than 2 years for that new standard to be designed and published into equipment. Now, for that requirement to become an approved training event or system, it must first be funded and moved through the DA Training Program Evaluation Group. They take aim at the requirements, and they use money and the acquisition process to hit the soldier's training target, but they miss, and the trainer is 2.5 to 5 years late. By then, it may not be the right type, the right quantity, in the right location, or may not have relevant capability. Quite frankly, it will most likely be antiquated by the time it's built. The POM process is at minimum a 5-year cycle. So unless by some coincidence that particular gunnery gap was identified 5 years before this soldier needed it, the DA Training Program Evaluation Group will miss the target too. There must be some way to meet the soldier's training need. The only player who has not yet been considered in this equation is industry. What if the soldier could look to the agility of industry to meet his need? Now, that takes 2 leaps of faith. The first leap is that the soldier knows what right looks like. He and his chain of command understand what he needs to meet proficiency standards, how much time that should take, and how much that could cost. Leap number 2 is that industry knows how to get that training technology to the warfighter. For over 30 years, industry has been producing ever-improving solutions to train the soldier for readiness. They know how to do it on a budget, on time, and deploy it to the warfighter at the right location. So what would it take for industry to be able to meet that 1-year goal? A new paradigm would develop that realigns roles to optimize timely delivery of effective training capabilities. Instead of TRADOC being buried in piles of complex requirements documents defining something that won't be available for 3 years, they would call on industry to bring forth solutions that are available today and assess them against TRADOC standards. POSTRI would no longer be burdened with protracted material development, but would validate industry partners through a qualifying vendors list and issue report cards on industry based on soldier feedback on quality of product and service. Since time is money, saving time means saving money. The DAG-3 no longer has to struggle deciding which equipping programs are funded and which are not, and they have a competitive, predictable budget metric to resource training events. With this perfect storm, industry would build fleets of trainers that deliver relevant quality products at a fair price on time and compete to do so continuously. The Army ends up with a more affordable and efficient resourcing model that meets the standard with vigorous competition. Industry would have to assume all the risks of the project. They would invest in private fleets of equipment that would anticipate the soldier's need in quantity, type of training curricula, cost, and be mobile enough to meet all location requirements while absorbing the sustainment tail. What if that existed today? It does. What if you could meet soldier proficiency on time, under budget, and eliminate the waste of life cycle management? You can. Here's how. Industry has the assets and intellectual property to respond to this right now. By focusing on event-based training services, Industry can provide the latest technology when you need it, in the right quantity, and at a cost you can afford. Private fleets of trainers can be configured to meet all your training requirements. But since our soldier needs gunnery training, let's configure it for him. So now our soldier's commander has a choice. He knows he needs gunnery training. Does he have the virtual trainer he needs in the right quantity where he needs it? No. Well then, who does? Vendor A has the virtual trainer, but it only has 3 lanes. That's not enough throughput, nor does it meet the requirement of our soldier and his buddies. So Vendor A moves on to fill a training gap elsewhere that matches the capability he has to offer. But Vendor B can roll in 6 trailers of gunnery equipment, and the soldier and his unit can have 18 lanes and a throughput that means they're trained faster, to the standard, with a turnkey solution that doesn't require a long-term maintenance tail or the MILCON costs associated with installation. When our soldier and his unit have achieved their training goals, Vendor B takes his fleet to the next training event, and the current unit no longer pays for a system they no longer need. Wow, what a concept! Now, you may ask, what would motivate industry to take on all this risk? Well, first, industry is motivated by profit, the future growth of their company, and welfare of the U.S. military. But let's not forget they're also motivated to win. The current acquisition model rewards monopolies, one big program, one big winner, and 5 years competition-free. Monopolies foster waste and encourage inflated costs and inflated timelines. This new model benefits the warfighter and the taxpayer by fostering competition. What does this do to the competitive marketplace? Now the market is auctioning events without monopolies. Competition breeds cost reduction, increased quality, compels proficiency innovation, and it forces industry to keep pace with the 5 sources of change: enemy TTPs, combat vehicle changes, science of human performance, the unit's changing mission, and technology. In this competitive marketplace, government no longer has to take on the burden of risk. In this training paradigm, industry absorbs all the risk. So now let's go back to the range. Remember our warfighter that has that 1-year finite training window for gunnery? Now, before he takes aim, industry arrives at the right location, on time, and trains him to the standard. He's not waiting for training. He's not waiting for an antiquated solution. He's not waiting for inappropriate throughput or broken equipment. His time is maximized and his training goals are achieved. Now let's take him to his qualifying event. The soldier aims and hits the mark the first time. No extended range time, no more wasted ammo, no retraining. He is successful, his unit is successful, his chain of command is happy, and his family is happy because he completed his training at home station. And guess what? Congress is satisfied that taxpayer money has been wisely spent and our nation's troops have met their readiness goals. So, in review, it's combat proficiency, on time, on budget, to the standard, with no waste. That's progress.